Have you ever felt like you did everything right? You showed up, you listened, you cared, and yet, instead of growing closer, she slowly began to pull away. No argument, no clear reason, just distance. That confusion is one of the most frustrating experiences men face in relationships, because from your perspective, effort should create connection. But attraction doesn't work on effort alone, it works on dynamics, and most men are never taught how those dynamics actually function. Here's the uncomfortable truth: women rarely say what they truly respond to in a relationship, not because they're dishonest, but because the moment they have to explain it, the attraction disappears. What draws them in operates at an instinctive level, not a logical one. When it has to be discussed, negotiated, or justified, it loses its power. So men keep guessing. They try harder, they overcorrect, they become more available, more agreeable, more careful. And paradoxically, that's when things begin to unravel, not due to lack of care, but because they're playing a role that slowly erodes desire. Most men don't fail because they aren't good enough. They fail because they're following rules that were never designed to create attraction in the first place. This isn't about romance, gifts, or saying the right thing at the right time. It's about understanding the silent expectations that shape how a woman feels over time. Ignore these unspoken dynamics, and no amount of affection will stabilize the connection. But understand them, and clarity replaces confusion. Attraction stops feeling fragile, and relationships stop feeling like guesswork. Let's begin with the first rule she expects without ever asking for it. She will almost never say this out loud, not because she doesn't want leadership, but because the moment she has to ask for it, it stops feeling like leadership. It turns into direction by request, and direction by request carries no emotional weight. Many men misunderstand what leadership actually means in a relationship. They assume it's about control, dominance, or authority. It isn't. Real leadership is quiet. It's decisiveness. It's the ability to move forward without constantly outsourcing choices to avoid making a mistake. When you repeatedly ask, "What do you want to do?" "Is this okay?" "Where should we go?" you believe you're being considerate. In reality, you're transferring the mental load to her. You're asking her to manage the experience, approve your decisions, and guide the interaction. Over time, that dynamic subtly shifts how she sees you. Indecision doesn't announce itself loudly. It erodes attraction slowly. It signals a lack of trust in your own judgment. And if you don't trust yourself, it becomes difficult for her to trust you in that role. Leadership shows up in small, everyday moments. Choosing the restaurant without turning it into a discussion, making plans and inviting her into them, saying, "Be ready at 7," instead of hovering in uncertainty. This doesn't mean ignoring her preferences. It means integrating them without needing permission at every step. There is a difference between being thoughtful and being directionless. Desire thrives on polarity, and the moment she feels like she's the one steering the relationship, that polarity begins to fade. When you lead calmly and consistently, she relaxes. She stops evaluating and starts responding. Not because you demanded it, but because you created an environment where she didn't have to lead. She will rarely say this directly, not because she doesn't need reassurance, but because asking for it feels exposed and unappealing. So instead of requesting it, she observes. She watches patterns. She notices how you behave when there's nothing to gain. Feeling chosen has very little to do with compliments or dramatic declarations. Saying, "I care about you," repeatedly doesn't create this feeling on its own. What matters more are the quiet signals that communicate priority without performance, the moments that don't ask for anything in return. Many men make the mistake of offering attention only when they want something. Affection appears when they're seeking closeness, reassurance, or intimacy. At first, she may accept it, but over time, she begins to feel the rhythm. Your warmth starts to feel conditional. Your presence feels tied to your needs rather than hers. When that happens, something subtle shifts. She doesn't confront you immediately. She doesn't announce dissatisfaction. Instead, she begins to question her place in your life. She becomes more aware of who notices her without prompting, who responds to her energy consistently, who makes her feel seen without being asked. This is why men often say, "It came out of nowhere." It didn't. The distance formed quietly. in the spaces between interactions. When a woman feels chosen consistently, not loudly or desperately, she relaxes. She invests emotionally because she doesn't feel like she's competing for your attention. That sense of security doesn't reduce attraction, it strengthens it. Loyalty grows where selection is felt, not demanded. Feeling chosen isn't something you explain, it's something she experiences. And when that feeling fades, the relationship begins to crack long before the breakup ever happens. This is where many men become uncomfortable because mystery is often misunderstood. It's confused with secrecy, distance, or manipulation. But real mystery is none of those things. It isn't about hiding, it isn't about playing games, and it certainly isn't about dishonesty. Mystery exists when a man doesn't collapse his entire inner world into the relationship. Many men believe that sharing every thought, every emotion, and every detail builds closeness. What it often does instead is remove curiosity. And curiosity is one of the quiet engines of attraction. Women don't just want to be with a man, they want to continue discovering him. When a woman feels like she already knows exactly what you'll say, exactly how you'll react, and exactly what you'll do next, something switches off, not consciously, but instinctively. Predictability flattens emotional energy, and flat energy doesn't create desire. This doesn't mean being emotionally unavailable, it means having depth that doesn't need constant explanation. Goals you're working toward without narrating every step. Interests you pursue without needing validation. A rhythm to your life that exists whether she's present or not. There's an important distinction between transparency and overexposure. Transparency builds trust. Overexposure erodes polarity. When nothing is reserved, there's nothing left to explore. Commitment doesn't require full access to every layer of your inner world. Loyalty doesn't demand emotional collapse. When a woman senses there is still more to you, more direction, more depth, more self-containment, her attraction stays engaged. She leans in. She pays attention. Mystery isn't distance. It's presence with boundaries. And it's one of the reasons desire survives long after the honeymoon phase ends. She may tell you that she can take care of herself. And in many ways, that's true. She is capable, independent, and functional in the world. But what she rarely says, and may not consciously articulate, is that her body still responds to a man who creates a sense of safety without turning it into a display. Protection isn't about aggression, control, or announcing your strength. In fact, the louder the performance, the less effective it becomes. Real protection is quiet. It's awareness. It's presence. It shows up in subtle, almost invisible ways. It's noticing shifts in her comfort before she has to say anything. It's positioning yourself naturally in unfamiliar environments. It's reading a room and responding calmly when energy changes, without escalating or drawing attention. These small behaviors send a powerful signal to her nervous system. You don't have to be on guard here. Protection isn't only physical. Emotional safety matters just as much. It's knowing when to redirect a conversation, when to shut down disrespect without making her feel exposed, and when to support her without turning it into a confrontation. Decisive, calm action lowers her defenses. Loud reactions raise them. When a woman doesn't feel protected, she doesn't necessarily panic. She starts calculating. She quietly questions whether you're someone she could rely on when things become uncomfortable or unpredictable. That doubt settles in the background and slowly changes how she shows up. Attraction doesn't disappear overnight. It fades as safety erodes. First trust softens, then openness, then desire. But when you protect without posturing, without insecurity, without needing recognition, her body feels it. She may never say thank you. You won't need it. Her behavior will tell you everything. She will almost never say this directly. In fact, early in the relationship, she may even enjoy the opposite. Your availability feels flattering. Your attention feels affirming. Being your priority feels good. But over time, something changes. A man who makes a woman the center of his universe slowly loses his own gravity. What begins as devotion turns into overavailability. Plans are dropped, schedules are rearranged, responses become instant. And while this may create closeness at first, attraction doesn't thrive on convenience. It thrives on value. Value is tied to direction. When your life begins to revolve around her, your purpose quietly moves to the background. Your ambition softens. Your edge dulls without you realizing it. You start signaling that your time is unlimited, and what isn't scarce isn't deeply valued. Women are drawn to men who are moving towards something, men with goals, momentum, friendships, and challenges that exist independently of the relationship. When your life is already full, her presence feels like an addition, not a responsibility. There's another truth men often avoid. Making her your only source of happiness places pressure on her. She becomes responsible not just for the relationship, but for your emotional stability. That isn't romantic, it's heavy. When she feels that your world would collapse without her, attraction doesn't grow, it suffocates. Ironically, when you prioritize your purpose, she often wants more of your time, not less, because now your attention feels intentional. It feels earned, it feels meaningful. Love her, be present, build memories, but never abandon the life that made you attractive in the first place. She will never ask for this directly, because the moment romance has to be requested, it stops feeling romantic. It turns into obligation, and obligation doesn't create desire, it drains it. Many men believe surprise requires money, planning, or grand gestures, but that's not what creates impact. What keeps emotional chemistry alive is spontaneity, the feeling that you thought of her without being prompted, without a calendar reminder, and without expecting anything in return. Surprise works because it disrupts predictability, and predictability over time quietly erodes attraction, not through boredom alone, but through emotional flatness. The most effective surprises are often small. Picking up something she mentioned in passing weeks ago, sending her a song that reminded you of her with no explanation, saying, "Get ready, we're going somewhere," without turning it into a discussion or negotiation. The act itself is less important than the signal behind it. That signal says you're attentive, you're present, you notice patterns, moods, and details, and you act on them naturally. When affection only appears on birthdays, anniversaries, or after conflict, it starts to feel scheduled, mechanical, managed. She stops feeling chosen and starts feeling maintained. Spontaneous moments reset emotional momentum. They reintroduce curiosity and anticipation is where excitement lives. Surprise doesn't require excess, it requires awareness. You can't surprise someone if you aren't paying attention. When your effort appears without reason and without expectation, her emotional guard lowers. She begins to wonder what you'll do next. Romance on a schedule feels safe. Romance without a reason feels alive. This is where many men lose themselves without realizing it. They begin to believe that being agreeable is the same as being supportive, that if they simply go along with everything, every opinion, every preference, every mood, they'll maintain harmony and keep the relationship secure. What they actually create is predictability. When you never challenge her, never tease her perspective, and never hold your ground, you don't come across as kind. You come across as emotionally flat, safe in the dullest possible way. And attraction does not live in dullness. Playful challenge is not conflict. It's not arguing to win. And it's never about putting her down. It's the light tension that comes from a man who is comfortable being himself, even when that means not agreeing. It shows up in a calm pause instead of instant approval, a confident smile instead of automatic compliance, a grounded response that says, "I hear you, but I don't disappear." That subtle resistance creates polarity. It signals that your identity exists independently of her reactions, and paradoxically, that independence draws her in rather than pushing her away. There's an important psychological truth here. People invest more where there is movement, where there is back and forth energy. When a woman feels she has to engage, persuade, or play a little to win you emotionally, she becomes more invested in the dynamic. Compliance removes that tension. It turns interaction into routine, and routine slowly drains desire. Playful challenge keeps attraction alive because it reflects confidence without hostility. You can disagree without escalating. You can stay firm without becoming rigid. You can be relaxed without being passive. She doesn't want a man who always agrees. She wants a man who stands comfortably where he is without needing permission. And when she feels that presence, attraction doesn't need to be chased. It stays.